when in 50, you joined the iron workers.
1950.
Now, how did you start becoming an iron worker? How'd that happen?
They're building the pole prelude plant in Rocker. And they put up a gin pole. And they got the guy lines off of it. But they had one block up there, which is in a rope, which is called a gantrum line. Them ropemen all wore size 5 hats and 54 coats. I mean, big men. And Guido Butte was there, and he said, "John, could we ask you a favor?" I was walking just like them guys, all across the timbers and that, all wide open, and I said, "What do you need?" He said, "Look at the crew." He said, "We need somebody to go up in the motion chair, hook it on that block, and hang these blocks, the first 2 blocks for us." I said, "Sure." So they pulled me up. And I hooked the block on, the ring, like on the top of the pole, and Barrett drives up. I thought they were going to drop me, the foreman. So they lowered me down. He comes over to me and says, "What the hell are you doing up there?" I said, "Well, they couldn't pull each other up. They're all too big." So I went up for him. "Don't that bother you?" And I said, "Not a bit." "Did you ever think about going on the rope gang?" He said, "I'd never been asked." "Well, you are now," he said. I said, "When do I have to know?" "Let you know." He said, "Tomorrow." I come home and talked it over with him. Go ahead. Well, Frankie Hayes was my partner. And he's working over there doing something. Barrett said to me, "John," I said, "Yeah." "How about Hazy?" I said, "Ask him." "Well," he said, "Not me. You know, Frankie Hayes was the toughest man I've ever walked around this time." He says, "You ask him." "Oh, Frank." He said, "Yeah, John. Barrett wants to know if you want to go on the rope gang." He stared at Barrett for a few minutes. He said, "I'd kill that son of a bitch in 2 weeks." 16 years later, he comes on the rope gang. He would have been ahead of me in seniority because H becomes before S, you know.
Uh-huh.
Here had a longer rope, and then when they were changing over, see, they had 4 decks here. And then when they got the men down, they took the decks off and pulled them over here out of the way, and put the Did you get through here with your camera?
Yeah, I'm going to go around. I'll go around the other side and look at you across.
All right, this is
Just a sec, John.
with these chain blocks here, see? They've got crawls on the side here. Okay, you get... There'd always be the man decks would be on the other side. Just the skips would hang here. When you got this over position in front of the shaft, you had that bar. And you pull the cable, took the pin off of the decks, pulled that cable back out of the way, tied it back to here. Then you put the decks, you roll them over. Say you're pulling the decks out, so you had 2 empty chain blocks. You have one, put that set of decks here, over there. Then you take this set of decks, and you put them over there. You got 2, then you got a skip. You bring the skip over, and you put it on the west side. You put this one in the west side, and you put your cable back on, put your pin in, swing it into the shaft, let the cage take it. You ring the bells, 3 slow bells, the engineer takes it up, it swings into the shaft, and when it gets in position, you shut the guides. Then you take that one, pull it over with the chain block, put it in the east side here, do the same thing, put the cable back on through this eye in the drawbar here, and then when you get ready, give them 3 slow bells, and as it goes up, these hooks will come, pull these hooks away from it, floats into the shaft, put her down, put the guides back, start hauling north.
Now this was called a changeover?
This is the changeover.
And what were the men called that did that kind of work?
Station tenders.
Station tenders, okay.
Station tenders did all the work with these things. Nobody else bothered these. Now when you wanted to lower these down, say they needed new shoes or new dogs. Now see that hurricane deck? See those legs? They go, one goes right there, one goes right there, one goes right over there, and half of it with the board on is permanent. When you put it on to go, the other half fit down in here so it'll pass the cable, the drawbar.
Okay.
Then you put your other board down, and then your bonnets would hang up. The bonnets would be maybe 6-7 feet above what they call the fly, you know, bonnets. So that it bounce the rocks that bounce away from you. You hope.
So a man would sit on the hurricane deck and just work on
right.
the...
Stand on it.
And what would he do on that?
Putting guides in, or wrecking the shaft, or if the cage went in the woods. See these dogs down there? See them dogs? They got their teeth on it. You see it right there?
Oh, yeah.
All right, when there was slack cable, the minute that cable went slack, that drawbar goes down. When that goes down, them dogs go, boom, they just drive right into the guides, and they hang that cage right there.
The guides are made out of wood, and so they just dig into the wood.
Right. Okay. Then they shut her down, and they call the ropeman.
Okay.
And that's when we come out, and we get on the other side and go down, and look at
another shaft. You get new.
I get on the other cage on the other side, in the other shaft.
Yeah.
There's no dividers like this all the way down to mine, and you can look right through both sides.
Okay.
Okay, and then maybe some places it's got gob lagging or shaft lagging in or panel lagging. But if you get down to where the wreck is and you look through, you might have to tear a couple of lagging off. Then you can see the wreck. Okay, if it's got slack cable, it'll usually coil up by itself right on top of the cage. Or if it's a lot of slack, it goes down along the sides, or it's a shitting mess. But then what you got to do is you give the engineer 3 slow builds, and he starts taking it up. If you see a circle coming, which they I got this is the word, it's the term that's used. An asshole's coming in, see? So you got stalls, 8-inch blocks, logs.
Yeah.
And you tie that onto the cable with rope, but you don't tie half hitches, you tie cow hitches. That's opposite. That's a backward half hitch is a cow hitch. When that cable starts to tighten up, that kinker is going to go, choo, and the log hangs right on it. It's tied to the cable, and it comes up with it. I've seen as many as 20 of them on a cable. When you get to surface, you leave them right on until you get up to surface because you have to inspect the cable anyway. When you get up to surface, you just take and cut them off. But they're all hanging on the... And sometimes they break the rope and down the shaft they go. But
that rope, what would it be pulling up?
it's holding on to the... It's taking the turnout. It's inside the asshole. You just set it right in there and then you tie it. Then you tie 2 cow hitches on it. And as the cable turns, it turns right around that log. Instead of getting the kink and solid it in tight like your fist, it just rolls it right up. Some of them you get so tight, they had to drive pieces of pipe in there, 2-inch pipe. I seen it right here in this mine. Mark Sherrick and me and Murphy, down on just about the 4000 had a wreck, and they didn't stop quick enough, and they pulled it too tight, and that cable was down to about then we had to drive a 2-inch pipe inside it, tie the pipe the same way, and it spins it out.
Well, now, is that all the ropeman did, is just go down and take care of wrecks?
No. all the machinery that goes down the mine, the cars, the motors, the pipe, the cooler lines, everything that went down the mine with the exception of the men and the timber and that. was loaded back on the road.
Okay, let's
We
go.
used to come out at 4 o'clock in the
What does a ropeman do besides take those kinks out of the rope?
morning. We take up slack cable. They lower all the motors, the big trolley motors, or the Manchu motors, or the battery motors, lower all the Granby cars that pull the rock. We got what they call a long tom. It's an extra long cage that you hang a chain block in the deck above the long tom with a 6-ton come along down in there, and you put the chain down through a choker on it, and then you put the choker in what they call a saddle on the front of the motor, and there's no units or nothing, there's no batteries in the motor, but the units and everything are in, and they're locked in. So you have a boom on these, on all the head frames had a boom that they used to swing and put stuff in the cages and decks with. All right, you bring that motor right up to the cage there, and the guy is you pull it right into the shaft, right into the cage, and you got that 6-ton come along, and you come along it in, and just to get it to where maybe there's about that much, it's up tight in the cage in the long tom, but there's about that much slack. Well, when it gets there, you're reining up the cage, and the cage will bring the rest of the way in, see? And then you lower it back down on a big timber, blocks, so that it sits on it. You tighten the hell out of that come along, then you lash it to the sidebars on the long tom. Can't move in the shaft. Down the mine it goes. You got guys down there, 3 men up, 3 men down, 3 ropemen up, 3 men, a 6-man crew, mine crew. Okay, when that gets down to the station, you stop the cage, you untie the ropes, you get a motor with what they call a jerk line. It's about 60 feet, a 1/2-inch cable with a hook on one end and an eye on the other end. And you put that eye over the motor, the hook on the motor, and you put the eye goes over that, and the hook goes on that bottom of that motor. There's a bar on the bottom there. So you hook onto that, and then he backs up the motor, and it floats out. But you don't worry about the come along now, because when it starts to float out, you just give the engineer 2 slow bells. He's coming down, and it's coming out, and the motor's pulling it. When it gets right down to what they call the turn chute, the sheets down there, you bring down the cage, it's coming down with you. It gets right there. When it stops, you unhook it, come along, let it swing back in the shaft. He pulls that motor back out of the way. The next deck up, you go back up and get the box where the batteries fit, the top of the motor. Okay, you bring that down, you lash that in the deck and on the long tom. Down it comes. When it gets there, you lower it past the level. You hook the snatch or the pull chain, the cable back on it again, hooked onto the motor. The jerk line is hooked onto the motor. You hook it onto the box. You ring the cage up. As the cage is going up, that thing starts to tip out. Then when you get it halfway out on the far enough, you stop the motor. The cage comes up, and the tube flies right out onto the.
Now, when you're talking about